I'm Harper. I run a company now, but let me tell you something. One word I said in a college quad still haunts me every single night. Useless. Liam, my husband back then, the man who could have moved mountains for me, the one who stayed up past midnight fixing my torn dress because he knew how much it meant to me, he heard that word from me. And I didn't care. Totally blind, totally clueless, chasing a hollow thrill that felt like wind in my hair, but was really just emptiness. I was low-key hooked on attention I thought I deserved elsewhere. The rush of DMs sliding into my inbox, little compliments from strangers telling me I looked insane or gorgeous or smart. And I ignored the real thing. I ignored Liam. The love that was right there. Tangible, patient, endless. I remember that peach-colored dress. It had a tiny rip at the hem, and I didn't even notice until Liam stayed awake sewing it by hand. Midnight oil burning, hands steady, eyes tired but full of devotion. I shrugged. I laughed at some random comment online. I didn't say thank you. I was hooked on the sound of strangers noticing me, and I was totally blind to the one person who mattered. And that shrug? That shrug stacked like bricks in a wall I built around myself. A wall to protect my ego and my craving for validation. Then the coffee thermos. Liam's thermos. Dented, coffee-stained from years of overuse. He filled it at 5 a.m., walked 3 blocks in the cold to my dorm, knocked lightly. 2 cups. 1 lukewarm for him, 1 perfect for me. I scrolled a DM buzzing in my hand and laughed, low-key thrilled at the attention. Totally missed the hurt in his eyes. That silence, that quiet patience, that tiny ritual he did every single day. I ignored it. I ghosted him with my attention, perfume bottle. He handed me a perfume once, the scent I loved most. I didn't even look up. I read a message. Can't wait to see you alone. My stomach fluttered, my ego danced. My mind was mind-blown with the thrill of attention. And he left, his hurt visible in every line of his face. I didn't care. I laughed it off later. I called myself free. Free to chase thrills. Free to be selfish as hell. You're useless, Liam. You don't get me. I snapped one afternoon, venom sharp in my voice. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched, and he just left. Walked out of my life for a while, leaving only silence behind. That sound, the closing door, echoed in my head for months. And that's when I began to notice, really notice, what I had thrown away. The man who pulled double shifts still managed to show up with snacks, coffee, fixed my torn gowns, handled my fees quietly, never demanded applause, never asked for attention, and I ignored it all. I was egoistic, blind, selfish, a villain in my own story, and I didn't even realize it until it was too late. I remember the time he taped my graduation gown cuffs at midnight because the seam split. My hands shaking, I barely mumbled thanks. I thought I was so independent, so grown up, so unbothered. I had no idea how much he sacrificed silently. I remember him showing up at 6 a.m. with coffee before my exam, standing at the edge of the dorm hallway while I freaked out, and I just rolled my eyes, muttered, "I got this," and went inside. I didn't need him? Wrong. I needed him more than I'll ever admit. I was chasing shadows, chasing meaningless attention, while he was living real, consistent, patient love. And the more I ignored him, the more he proved himself. That's the irony. And I, in my ego, dismissed it. I scrolled social media, laughed at messages, flirted with compliments from strangers, and called myself smart. Totally clueless. Totally blind. Low-key enjoying my own selfishness. Then the day came. The verbal slap. I called him useless. I didn't pause, didn't think, just words spilling out like venom. And I saw the life drain from his eyes. He left, walked away without a word. I stared at the empty space he had occupied. My heart should have clenched. My mind should have screamed. But I didn't care then. I thought the thrill, the freedom, the attention was enough. Now, I sit in a glass-walled boardroom, global chairwoman on the nameplate. 50 people listen when I speak. Multi-million-dollar deals happen around me. But my mind drifts back to the peach dress, the thermos, the perfume, the small things Liam did to love me silently. And that one word, that stupid, careless word, useless, still echoes. I built an empire, but nothing heals that hole, that regret, that knowledge that I let the man who truly mattered slip away while chasing hollow applause. Little did I know then, the person who valued me the most would soon be tested, tangled, and challenged by someone else, someone who didn't deserve him. That's when the office drama began, and that's where my undoing truly started. And in a way, the stage was set for my revenge, my realization, and everything that would follow. I never thought walking into the office that morning would feel like stepping onto a battlefield I had unknowingly set up. The elevator dinged, and there she was, Haley, the new manager, hair perfectly styled, sharp suit, and eyes that seemed to measure every detail. I froze for a second, low-key freaking out, trying to calm the surge of jealousy and regret flooding my chest. Liam waved at me, that gentle grin of his that used to make my heart skip a beat back in college. I caught myself remembering everything I had taken for granted: the thermos he brought me before dawn, the coffee he burned for me just because I liked it that way, the gown he fixed at midnight before my big presentation. And now? Now all those small, loving gestures were unnoticed by me, but clearly not by Haley. She extended her hand to Liam first, a casual, confident motion, and his polite smile met her gaze. Totally unaware, he leaned in to help her with a stack of reports, and I watched the subtle tilt of her head, the quiet fascination she displayed. My stomach twisted and my mind screamed, but my voice stayed silent. I reminded myself to breathe, to observe, to note. Harper, the chairwoman, powerhouse, and yet here I was, a student of my own mistakes. The tension hummed through the air, a slow pulse I couldn't ignore. The first few days were quiet, deceptively so. Liam's efficiency, dedication, and quiet charisma were evident to everyone. Haley noticed everything. Totally hooked, she began small interactions. Casual chats, lighthearted remarks about deadlines, playful comments on presentations. "No cap, Liam, you're killing it with these projections," she said one afternoon, and he responded politely, maybe even a little amused, unaware that each word and glance was catalogued in her mind. I observed from a distance, low-key analyzing every movement. My chest ached, and I had to remind myself that this was not about possession. This was about understanding the consequences of careless words and lost trust. Lunch in the cafeteria became a stage. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and they sat across from each other, sharing sandwiches, discussing projects, laughing softly. I stayed at my usual corner table, fingers tapping unconsciously against the napkin, noting the subtle dance of attention and admiration. Liam leaned slightly in to explain a detail. Haley responded with a soft laugh, eyes shining, totally drawn to his sincerity and calm confidence. I felt that familiar twist of regret and something else, an uncomfortable fascination with the scenario unfolding. The contrast was brutal. Texts followed, work-related at first, brief clarifications and status updates. But over time, the tone subtly shifted just enough to make me notice. Harper, the silent observer, started taking mental notes. Patterns, gestures, timing, and the micro-expressions that betrayed admiration. I realized how much influence tiny actions hold when unacknowledged care goes unnoticed. Liam was polite, professional, yet the light in his eyes when she spoke, the gentle encouragement, the patience, all of it screamed of a man whose worth I had misjudged. A lesson arriving slowly and painfully. By midweek, the office dynamics became a calculated storm. Haley's smile lingered a fraction longer when Liam presented results. Her voice softened, just slightly, when asking questions. He responded with the same courteous ease, never suspecting the undercurrents forming around him. I walked past, pretending to focus on my own empire, but every fiber of me was alert, analyzing, learning. I noted her subtle strategies, the small way she leaned in, the flicker of recognition when he achieved something. Each interaction, each smile, each polite nod added fuel to a fire I hadn't expected to reignite. Evenings at home were an exercise in restraint. Liam came back exhausted, yet tried to share his day with me. I caught his distracted glance at a message, a fleeting smile at something she had written. My gut tightened, and I tapped my fingers against the coffee table. Low-key freaked out. Observation, calculation, and patience became my tools. This wasn't about confronting Liam or Haley just yet. It was about seeing the consequences of my own past actions unfold, about learning how I would move next. By Friday, the patterns were undeniable. Haley's presence was no longer just a casual charm. It was a subtle, persistent force. She initiated collaborative tasks that required Liam's guidance, casual discussions that blossomed into shared laughs, teasing remarks that were entirely innocent but potent enough to stir curiosity and tension. I realized my role had shifted. I was no longer just a passive observer. I was a strategist, a silent player in a game that had already started. And in that realization, I knew my next moves had to be deliberate, calculated, and precise. Observation alone would not suffice. Strategy, subtle maneuvering, and timing were everything. The office, the relationships, the unnoticed loyalty of a man I once called useless, it was all now a chessboard. I would play silently. Harper, the observer turned tactician, while they remained oblivious. Every gesture, every glance, every subtle nod or smile was a piece in my plan, a signal of how far I would go to reclaim awareness, respect, and perhaps some measure of emotional justice. Little did they know, the weeks ahead would be a test of patience, strategy, and self-restraint. For me, Harper, this was no longer just a reflection of past mistakes. It was the beginning of a game I intended to win. With eyes wide open, heart guarded, and mind sharpened by the consequences of words once carelessly spoken. Every day, every interaction, every subtle spark was a lesson, and I was ready to learn, to act, and to see the tides turn in ways they could never imagine. The chessboard was set, the pieces in motion, and the first real move was mine. That's how the next chapter would begin, with deliberate observation, subtle tension, and a strategy that would leave no room for mistakes. And as I watched, I reminded myself, every small action matters, and every tiny spark could ignite change beyond what anyone could anticipate. I walked into the office that morning, coffee in one hand, mind screaming, voice staying silent. The elevator dinged, and there she was, Haley. Bright smile, effortless charm, like she had stepped off a different planet and into my carefully calculated world. "Morning, Liam," she chirped, voice light, energy radiant. I watched Liam glance up, that subtle warmth in his eyes for someone else, someone younger, fresher. My chest tightened. A low-key freak-out that I had, Bobby. They erased me before you learned how to walk. Cole stepped between us instantly. "Back off." The man raised his hands slightly. "Relax. If I wanted to end this, the door wouldn't have stopped me." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. The man continued, "Ethan, you deserve the truth. Not the version they fed you. Not the version he ran away from." He nodded at the scarred man. The scarred man's jaw tightened. "You don't get to tell him anything." "Oh, I do," the stranger said calmly. "It's my footage." Cole froze. "You're the one who recorded the night?" He gave a slow nod. "Every second." My breath hitched. "Why would you record something like that?" He didn't flinch. "Because I knew they'd lie. They always lie." The scarred man clenched his fist. "You ruined everything." "No," the stranger replied. "You did." The room felt like it was shrinking, the energy crackling like static. The stranger walked past me slowly, meetings, pitches, and CEO praise that should have felt routine but now grated on my nerves. Haley presented with that effortless flair, notes well prepared, voice steady, glances meeting Liam's, small laughter shared that wasn't meant for me. I scribbled in my notebook, observe, calculate, anticipate. Every tilt of her head, every micro laugh, every brush of her hair past her shoulder, recorded. My mind played subtle scenarios. What would happen if Liam noticed me now? Or if I let him continue noticing her, blissfully unaware of the storm I was building? Low-key, I felt a thrill at the thought of controlling this board. Evenings were worse. Liam stayed late, emails piling up, subtle tension weighing down on his shoulders. I followed the rhythm of his day silently, strategically, eyes flicking, emotions calibrated. That tiny smirk from Liam, a fleeting laugh from Haley. Daggers to my chest, I refused to vocalize. Yet inside, I was already planning, already a few moves ahead, cataloging patterns of interaction, timing, energy exchanges. No cap, I muttered quietly. This is about to get messy. My way. Back in my corner office, I leaned against the glass wall, watching the conference room where they had now regrouped. Liam's polite gestures, the way he tilted his head toward Haley, subtle nods, moments of mutual understanding that I had once taken for granted in our marriage, every memory sharpened into clarity. I scribbled micronotes, gesture patterns, emotional investment, timing of laughter, pause before replies. My chessboard was expanding, pieces set for an upcoming move only I could see. Texts pinged. Haley's tone casual. Can't wait for next week's project review? It's going to be fun. Liam's response, polite, slightly amused. My internal response? A silent snarl, a calculated step into the shadows of their unknowing world. My own hands shaking slightly with the thrill of strategy, the low-key obsession growing, yet under total control. Every observation, every tiny behavioral tick, archived. My mind was now an arsenal of anticipation. By late evening, when most left and the office lights dimmed to a golden glow, I remained cataloging. Each move made by Haley, each glance exchanged with Liam, every micro-expression, sigh, nay, all pieces on my board. I leaned back, letting the thrill settle, but not too much. Every move I cataloged today would inform the next play, and the next move would shock them both, I whispered, letting the tension linger in the empty office. My eyes lingered on Liam's abandoned coffee cup. I knew, just like in chess, the final checkmate would feel inevitable and utterly satisfying. That night, walking back through the elevator, empty halls echoing my footsteps, I felt the pulse of the game settle in me. Observer Harper was now strategist Harper, low-key obsessed, utterly calculated. The thrill of anticipation mixed with the sting of regret over past blindness made my chest ache. But this ache was fuel, not weakness. And tomorrow, every small gesture, every flicker of a smile, every tiny glint in their eyes would be part of the plan. My plan. No cap, I thought. The game was on, and I had just begun moving pieces in ways no one saw coming. Walls, painting the polished floors in sharp amber light. I stepped in. Harper, mind racing like a machine, every micro moment of yesterday cataloged and analyzed. Liam sat at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, polite, methodical, utterly oblivious to the microdynamics surrounding him. Haley drifted past like a breeze, hair brushing her shoulders, laughter light, energy magnetic, totally crushing the space without trying. My chest tightened. Low-key freaked out, yet totally engrossed. Every tilt of her head, every smirk, every subtle glance toward Liam, archived in the mental chessboard I'd built. Every micro-behavior cataloged, every intention labeled, every possible reaction anticipated. By mid-morning, the office hummed with life. Emails pinged, keycards clicked, the hum of conversation layered over keyboard taps, and yet my eyes never left the duo. Liam's gestures were precise, polite, almost predictable. Haley, effortlessly playful, leaned in subtly when he explained a point, fingers brushing the edge of his notepad. Tiny, low-key micro-changes in posture. I noticed everything. My heartbeat skipped at times. I whispered under my breath. No cap. They don't even know what hit 'em. Each movement fed the strategy forming in my mind, a silent orchestra of micro-actions that only I could hear. Lunch came, a brief chaos in the cafeteria. I grabbed my usual corner, latte cooling faster than I noticed. Haley laughed, an almost imperceptible tilt of the head, hair sliding past her cheek, a micro-dagger in my chest. Liam mirrored her ever so slightly, adjusting his chair closer. My fingers drummed against the table, low-key obsession creeping in. My eyes cataloged every gesture, cup lifted, straw adjusted, pen twirl, flick of a smile. Every micro-moment became a piece of a bigger game. Every smile, every tilt, every inhale. Data. Game's on for real this time. I murmured, excitement threading through my veins like electricity. Afternoon meetings, the so-called mundane routine, became a battlefield of subtle moves. Haley spoke, voice steady, inflections carefully tuned. Liam's gaze followed. A soft nod here, a slight grin there. I tracked it all. The micro size, the tiny adjustments of posture, the pulse in his wrist as he scribbled notes. My chest fluttered with calculated thrill. Low-key, I tapped fingers against my notebook. My mind raced through tactics. When to nudge, when to remain unseen, when to let the tension simmer. Every day, every movement, every expression, now part of a living, breathing strategy, I whispered quietly. Micro pauses in my own VO, every sentence mentally annotated. By evening, the office lights cast long shadows across the cup lifted, straw adjusted, pen twirl, flick of a smile. Every micro moment became a piece of a bigger game. Every smile, every tilt, every inhale. Data. Game's on. For real this time, I murmured, excitement threading through my veins like electricity. Afternoon meetings, the so-called mundane routine, became a battlefield of subtle moves. Haley spoke, voice steady, inflections carefully tuned. Liam's gaze followed. A soft nod here, a slight grin there. I tracked it all. The micro size, the tiny adjustments of posture, the pulse in his wrist as he scribbled notes. My chest fluttered with calculated thrill. Low-key, I tapped fingers against my notebook. My mind raced through tactics. When to nudge, when to remain unseen, when to let the tension simmer. Every day, every movement, every expression, now part of a living, breathing strategy, I whispered quietly. Micro pauses in my own VO, every sentence mentally annotated. By evening, the office lights cast long shadows across the polished floors. Liam compiled reports, his focus unwavering. Haley's chair angled subtly toward his desk, gestures ongoing, unbroken. I lingered in observation, cataloging every minute, low-key, exhilarated, mind-whirring. Observer Harper had fully transformed. Strategist Harper, precise, calculating, ready. Every flicker of a smile, every casual glance, every whispered word in the office air became a move on my mental chessboard. My pulse synced with the rhythm of the unfolding interactions. Low-key freaked out, totally thrilled, and fully aware. The final moments of the day, shadows growing, monitors dimmed, were mine to analyze. I replayed the day in mental slow motion. Haley's tilt, Liam's polite nod, the casual brush of hands across papers, all micro-actions stored for tomorrow's strategy. I leaned against the glass wall, whispered into the quiet. They think they're playing the game, but every move is mine. Every single one. Breath slowed, pulse steady, internal smile tugged at my lips. Micro details cataloged, chessboard ready, anticipation low-key electrifying. Tomorrow would be the next set of moves. Subtle, invisible, orchestrated. And no one, not Liam, not Haley, would suspect a thing. Every moment today fed into the larger plan. Micro pauses, small gestures, subtle inflections, all part of a meticulously constructed strategy. I let my gaze wander once more across the emptying office, fingers tapping rhythmically against the glass desk. Breath slow but heart racing just enough to savor the tension. The thrill of the plan, the low-key obsession, the chessboard of micro-behaviors, alive and ready. Every move cataloged, every detail weaponized. And as the night embraced the office, I whispered once more. Tomorrow, every piece will fall exactly where I intend, and they won't even see it coming. The office was quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional click of heels on polished floors. Harper sat by the glass wall, cataloging every subtle shift, every instinctive flicker of expression. Liam was at his desk, completely unaware of the storm brewing in her mind while Haley leaned over a report, her fingers brushing his hand ever so slightly. Harper's breath hitched. Low-key, she felt that stab of jealousy, but also a thrill she couldn't name. No cap, this was a whole new level of tension. She watched Liam glance in her direction for a split second, and her fingers almost instinctively tapped the pen she had been nervously spinning. She froze. He didn't know she was cataloging this moment, not realizing the chessboard was fully alive in her mind. The old coffee cup they once shared, still sitting faintly stained on her desk, glimmered under the morning light. It was almost a symbol now, silent witness to what had been and what was about to unfold. Harper's eyes flickered back to Liam and Haley. Every gesture, every soft shift in their positions, like the world was telling me, "You survived. Now breathe." I looked up at the sky, letting the snow land on my face. "Dad, I'm gonna live the life you wanted for me. No debts, no fear, no running. If you're watching this and you think everyone deserves a chance to start over, hit like. And if you've ever carried a burden you never asked for, comment free." Tonight wasn't the end of my story, it was the moment I finally claimed it as mine. Walking away from that cold night, I finally understood something deep. Life doesn't always break you to destroy you. Sometimes it breaks you to rebuild you into someone stronger. My dad wasn't the villain I painted in my head. He was a man carrying scars I never noticed, fighting battles I never thanked him for. And that hit me hard. People mess up, people fall, people hide their pain behind quiet smiles. Was a piece she intended to capture, to understand, to predict. Then it happened. Haley accidentally brushed Liam's hand while reaching for a pen. A subtle, unintentional touch, but Harper caught it. Her heart skipped. The twist was small, almost mundane, but in her mind, it was a spark that ignited a storm. Liam's eyes flicked toward Harper for a brief second, curious, almost questioning, but he returned to his work as if nothing happened. Harper's chest tightened. Her pen slipped, tapping the desk in an audible, instinctive gesture. He noticed. Her eyes widened. No cap, she thought this was it. The tiniest misstep, yet everything had shifted. Harper's mind raced. She replayed every past moment, every interaction, every flicker of attention he had ever given her. She felt the low hum of her obsession intensify, mixing with a calculated calm.
The office seemed alive with energy, the amber morning light casting long shadows, the polished floors reflecting the subtle movements of the three of them. Harper's internal monologue sharpened, a tactical map of strategy forming. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just watch them, she thought. I'd enter the board. Every move would be mine, not theirs. She inhaled deeply, letting the anticipation settle into a controlled, thrilling pulse. Every heartbeat synced with the unfolding plan. The pen in her hand became a symbol, the coffee cup a relic, each object a piece of her strategy, each movement a note in the symphony of her next step. She catalogued Haley's casual tilt of the head, Liam's unintentional smirk, the soft, barely there gestures that most would overlook. But Harper wasn't most. Every second was a calculation, every glance a potential vulnerability. She whispered to herself, low-key, almost smiling, "They think they're playing the game, but every move is mine, every single one." And with that thought, she leaned back, letting the moment stretch, savoring the tension, the control, the impending revelation. The office continued its rhythm, unaware that a storm was building in Harper's mind, a storm poised to shift everything tomorrow. Shadows lengthened, and the afternoon sun cast an amber glow through the blinds, highlighting the tiny instinctive shifts of movement around her. Each flicker, each subtle expression was now part of a living, breathing strategy, and Harper felt the thrill coursing through her veins. She had evolved from observer to strategist, low-key obsessed, fully aware, and ready. The chessboard wasn't just a metaphor anymore, it was her world, and the pieces were moving exactly how she intended. The final glance at Liam and Haley sealed her resolve. Tomorrow, she would not just watch. She would step in. Every memory, every symbol, every subtle flicker had built to this precise moment. And as the shadows lengthened, she whispered again, almost to herself, every move a step closer, every move part of the game, every move mine. The day had shifted into late afternoon, golden sun slicing through the office blinds, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Harper leaned against her desk, breathing deliberately, feeling the pulse of anticipation. Every step Liam and Haley took was etched into her mind, catalogued not just for observation, but for understanding their patterns, their subtle dependencies, their vulnerabilities. No cap, she thought. This was it. The final act. The chessboard had never been clearer, and she was finally ready to play. Liam, unaware of the storm behind Harper's eyes, glanced at his watch, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Haley leaned casually, laughing softly at a private joke, her hair brushing his shoulder. Harper's heart stuttered at the intimacy of the small touch, and yet, for the first time in weeks, a strange calm settled over her. She realized that control was not just about watching, it was about timing, and timing was everything. She let the pen in her hand spin between her fingers, a tiny symbol of the power she now held over her own emotions, over the narrative she had been weaving for so long. Her mind drifted briefly to the past, the college days when Liam had smiled at her without knowing the chaos of her ego, the sticky notes, the shared coffee cups, the careless laughter. She felt that pang of old regret, sharp but contained, a bittersweet reminder of what had been. Then she snapped back. The present demanded action. Every glance, every subtle shift in the office was now a calculated move. Every micro-gesture was a note in her symphony, but this time, she would not just catalog, she would intervene. Harper walked toward the conference room where Liam and Haley were reviewing documents. Her steps were deliberate, soft but resolute, each movement measured to convey calm authority. She could feel the subtle tilt of her own posture affecting the room, a silent declaration of her presence. Liam looked up, startled for the briefest second, his eyebrows lifting as recognition crossed his face.
"Harper," he murmured, voice catching, almost uncertain. She offered a faint, almost teasing smile. No cap. The thrill of the moment coursed through her like electricity. Haley's glance flickered, instinctive curiosity. But Harper was prepared. She had cataloged, analyzed, anticipated. She allowed just enough vulnerability to humanize herself, a small tilt of the head, a soft gesture that masked the intensity beneath. Liam's eyes betrayed a flicker of recognition, and in that heartbeat, Harper realized the final piece of her strategy had landed. Attention redirected, control reclaimed, the chessboard now hers. The twist, the subtle shift, came not in confrontation, but in understanding. Harper allowed herself a deep inhale, feeling every memory, every regret, every unspoken word coalesce into clarity. "I used to lose myself in him," she whispered under her breath, "but now I'm finally in control." The internal conflict that had haunted her, the low-key obsession, the jealousy, the regret was now tempered by resolve. Every emotional beat, every heartbreak, every flicker of old pain became fuel for her strategy. A subtle symbolism reinforced her dominance. The old coffee cup, faintly stained, now positioned precisely on the edge of her desk. Liam's old pen resting inside her notebook. The sticky note with his familiar handwriting. A quiet reminder of what once was, now woven into what must be. Each object, a silent narrative, each micro-detail, a story within the story. Harper's voice in her head was calm, precise, tactical. Tomorrow the board will shift. Every move calculated, every outcome predicted, every piece in place. She observed Liam once more, noting the faint crease in his forehead, the tilt of his shoulder, Haley's subtle reaction to his words. This was the culmination. Every lesson, every observation, every sleepless night cataloging emotions and gestures had led to this precise moment. Then she stepped forward, not in haste, not in anger, but with deliberate presence. She intercepted Liam's attention with a single glance, and he met her eyes fully for the first time in months. Recognition, surprise, and finally, understanding flickered across his face. Harper felt a satisfying calm sweep through her. A full circle moment, the final checkmate on her internal chessboard. Haley, sensing the shift, instinctively leaned back, a subtle acknowledgement of the unspoken dynamic that had changed without confrontation. The office felt suspended in that moment, amber light painting shadows like a cinematic tableau. Harper cataloged nothing now, because the game had ended. Not in defeat, not in victory over others, but in mastery over herself, over her emotions, over the story she had been writing in secret for months. Every micro-movement, every glance, every low-key gesture had culminated in perfect alignment. The twist, The drama, the emotional crescendo. Finally, all woven together. Harper smiled softly, almost imperceptibly, spinning the pen once more before tucking it away. Every move, mine. Every game, mine. Every lesson, learned. The office buzzed softly around her, oblivious, but she knew the truth. She had rewritten the narrative not by confrontation, but by understanding, strategy, and timing. The chessboard metaphor was complete, every piece accounted for, every move anticipated. The story that had begun with regret, obsession, and low-key obsession had reached its apex: resolution, control, and self-mastery. And as she walked back to her desk, letting the amber light wash over her, Harper knew one thing for certain: the past had shaped her, the present had empowered her, and the future was entirely hers. No cap. This was the ending she had written, the ending she deserved, and the ending the audience would never forget.